What's up, y'all? This is Claire Dunn, and you're listening to TNCRadio.LIVE.
Good evening. Welcome to TNCRadio.LIVE, and this is Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. This is our debut episode, and we're very excited to get to know Dr. Chris tonight. And Dr. Chris, welcome in. How are you tonight, sir?
I am well, Tom. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I am really happy to be here.
Well, and we're happy to have you here. You know, we think this is going to be a great show. What we're looking forward to is picking your brain over the course of this show each week, talking about some of the things that our drivers go through, and, you know, everybody goes through as a part of life. We spend an awful lot of time in this country talking about making our bodies stronger, but not as much time working on our minds. And sometimes even in the world of driving truck, you know, you don't want to talk. I'm a tough guy. I don't have any problems. You know, what are you talking about? Mental problems? No, not me. Mm. And the truth is, everybody has their issues. And but you've been around doing this for a while. How long have you been doing therapy?
Well, let's see. I had my doctorate in 1983 and went into full-time private practice in 1986. So I guess I had my 35-year anniversary of full-time private practice. Of course, I was only 9 when I was starting. And, of
course.
Yeah. One of the very few fourth graders that were licensed that year.
Yeah, exactly.
As a psychologist. Yeah.
The Doogie Howser of psychology.
That's my story.
Right, and you're sticking to it. Mm-hmm. So, all right. And where did you go to school?
I went to school in 3 different states. I had a 4-year bachelor's degree out of New York, and then a master's in South Texas, and got my doctorate out of San Diego, California. Came to Florida to do an internship and forgot to leave.
All right. Well, hey, you mentioned South Texas, and there, of course, we broadcast live from the shadow of the Johnson Space Center right down here in Houston, Texas. And you're located over in Florida. Whereabouts in the Florida area?
Sarasota, Venice. That's on the west coast, about an hour south of Tampa. It is known to be a retirement community. Yeah. The town where I practice, Venice, is the oldest town, Tom, per capita in the entire country. The average age in Venice is 69 years old. And wow. I think that's just the age of Garden Elementary students. I'm pretty sure it's older elsewhere. And so it's an old town. It's a safe town. Salt of the earth people who have relocated to Sarasota County from other places. And that mainly includes Midwest and Northeast. People who did fairly well with their lives and were fortunate enough to find a winter home for a while, and then many moved down full-time. And they bring their good values and their work ethics and their kindness and desire to help other people to Venice. So it's a terrific little town.
Now, did you grow up in New York State?
I grew up in a place you've never heard of called New Jersey. And it's a very sad story, actually. I can't prove this, but I believe I was switched at birth with Derek Jeter of the New York Yankees.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, I was supposed to be a Hall of Fame shortstop with many championship rings, and he was supposed to be an underpaid psychologist. And as it turns out, we're living each other's lives. He's done really well with mine, by the way.
Yeah, he did. He did pretty well, and he's keeping it going. You know, now he owns a team. So,
and just in case anyone asks, I don't.
You don't. That was my next question. Yeah, no teams whatsoever. Not even the local Little League team.
I can't afford it.
Can't afford it. Yeah, I understand. Formative years in New Jersey, where as we're recording this tonight, it's 27 degrees in New Jersey right now. I think you like it better.
That's why I forgot to leave Florida.
Exactly. That's where I was going. I noticed a little pattern here as you're talking about Texas, California, Florida. Haven't done a lot of snow shoveling recently, have you?
That actually happened to me my senior year of college. I said, this is my last winter in the north. I will be looking for schools and a life south of here. And that's exactly what happened. I found a school in, again, South Texas and Southern California, and I haven't looked back. I can go back skiing or having a nice little snow weekend here or there, but I'm not a fan of the cold.
Yeah, the last time that I shoveled snow in St. Louis, the wind chill factor was minus 40, and I walked inside and my beard had frozen to my scarf. And as I started to take my scarf off, I couldn't because it was too painful. I had to put my face over the fireplace and let it melt. And I went back outside, and I took my snowblower, my snow shovel, and my heavy parka, and I put them on the front porch of my next-door neighbor and rang the doorbell and ran away. And he came over the next day, and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I am moving to Houston day after tomorrow. I will never need that stuff again, because I promise I will not need a snowblower in Houston." I was right. I never missed it. And he thought I was crazy just leaving all that stuff behind, but certain areas of the country, they don't even know what a snowblower is. I mean, they see pictures of them on TV, but they've never had to, do that at, middle of the night trying to get the driveway clear so that you can leave for work the next morning, and only to find out that the snowplow came by and dumped it all right back in your driveway again. You got to shovel it again before you can leave. And
well, that's a compelling story to me for another reason, because I'm thinking I might try the same thing with my kids. Now, you say you just ring the doorbell and run away?
Exactly. Just leave them right there. Yeah.
I'm taking notes as you speak. These are some good pointers.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got kids. I was going to ask you about that, too.
I do. I have a 13-year-old daughter who's grappling with middle school and all that brings to the table.
Oh, yeah.
And then a 10-year-old son who's okay with school, but he likes video games a lot more than he likes school.
Yeah, don't they all? A 13-year-old daughter, well, that's enough to drive anybody into therapy right there, isn't it?
Yes, sir. I'm looking around to make sure she's not listening.
It's not easy being a teenager in the world today, and that's something that I'm sure we'll talk about as time goes by, as we talk about different things. And
Absolutely.
One of them is, being a parent of a teenager now is so different than, my kids are all in their 30s now. And, it's very different than it was even 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, there were some video games, but, they weren't much more than Pac-Man, and, they weren't that exciting. And, now, of course, there are more video games than you can shake a stick at, and you can stay on them for days at a time. And people do stay on them for days at a time.
When people don't have the ability to self-govern, they can destroy their lives. A lot of college students have done that because of their inability to monitor their time on video games. And they just couldn't perform well in class. They didn't study enough. They didn't stay awake when they should have, and they stayed awake other times when they should have been sleeping. And
Absolutely.
It's sad when they come home as a freshman, having failed out of school, that they had all the potential in the world to fulfill, and they didn't.
Yeah, and I have a very close relative, too, who best we can figure out is he quit going to class around February. And and he brought home all F's and 1 D. And my dad looked at him and said, "What happened here?" And he said, well, obviously I spent too much time on one class. So that was my brother. But, what's funny is he went on to get a master's, and now he's a big highfalutin pastor and all this kind of stuff. And he just, it took him a little while to kind of click in with the college thing. It's not for everybody.
Well, you make a good point. Not only is it not for everybody, but it's not for everybody right away. There are many people who go back later on in life and find that now that they're more mature and they know why they're going and they have a purpose, they can do so much better than when they were 18 or 19 years old and doing it for somebody else's agenda and not their own.
Exactly. I tell you what, we're going to take our first break. We're going to step out for just a few minutes. You're listening to TNCRadio.LIVE. You're with Tom Kelly and Dr. Christopher Cortman. This is Building Strong Minds. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
This blog on TNCRadio.LIVE is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. 5 best scenic drives for truck drivers. One of the many benefits of being a truck driver is traveling the beautiful United States. Truck drivers spend their life on the road. Although they may get tired of driving, there's still routes and attractions most look forward to seeing. Whether it be cruising down the coast of California, driving in the Smoky Mountains, or passing through the Arizona desert, truck drivers all have their personal favorites. Here are the 5 most beautiful scenic drives rated by truck drivers. Pacific Coast Highway. The Pacific Coast in California, also called Highway 1, is one of the most iconic scenic drives in the United States. Driving along the Pacific Coast reminds you of a movie or TV show. It's about 650 miles long and runs from Capistrano Beach in Orange County to Leggett in northern Mendocino. San Juan Skyway. San Juan Skyway, a scenic byway in Colorado, is known for its million-dollar views. The byway goes across the San Juan National Forest and has provided truckers with beautiful views of the mountains and landscape. Beartooth Highway. Beartooth Highway in Montana is a 68-mile byway that runs through southwest Montana and northwest Wyoming and goes into Yellowstone National Park. Along this drive, you'll see one of the most diverse ecosystems accessible by vehicle in the United States. Keep in mind that the scenic highway closes in the winter due to adverse winter conditions and typically opens up on Memorial Day weekend. I-64 in West Virginia. West Virginia has some of the most beautiful landscapes on the East Coast. Driving down I-64 in West Virginia feels like you're in a painting. If you have time to stop along your truck route, check out Tamarack, located just off I-64 in Beckley, West Virginia. Tamarack is a unique culture center with art from local artisans and delicious food. If you want the full Appalachian experience, check out Tamarack. Utah's Route 12. Utah's Route 12 is one of the most scenic routes in the United States. It's often called the All-American Road. Also, there are 2 national parks at each end of the road, Bryce Canyon and Capitol Reef, and many other unique scenic views. This info blog was brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net.
Be sure to catch the Truckers Network radio show with your host, Shelley Johnson, weekdays at 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on TNCRadio.LIVE.
Welcome back, TNCRadio.LIVE. This is Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. Happy to have you all along with us this afternoon. So what do you think, Dr. Chris? Is that music all right for our walk-in music? Kind of jazzy there?
Very cool, very jazzy.
Yeah.
But I know you guys also know how to rock, so I like that too.
We can rock, we can country, we can do all sorts of different things here, and we do. Mm-hmm. We do all sorts of them. But it's fantastic to have you with us. Our debut show, and spending a little time getting to know you some. Now, next week, well, let me explain. Right after this hour, we do another show called Truckers Life. And Truckers Life is put on by TFC Global. They take on all sorts of things that truckers face all the time. And one of the things that we'll be talking about on next week's show, author Brad Huddleston has written a book called Digital Cocaine. I wanted to swing back around and talk a little bit more about this. addiction that people seem to have right now with their cell phones. And now, don't get me wrong, you're not supposed to turn off your cell phone while you're listening to us, because you can listen to us. And so, you leave it on for that. But, there are some people, and I can be guilty of this sometimes, even myself, that cannot walk out of the room unless they have their phone in their hand.
Yes.
And they have to have it with them wherever, because, God forbid they miss something, and these days, if you miss a tweet or a text message or whatever, well, you're just behind.
It's set up that way. We get little reinforcers in our brain, secretions of a chemical called dopamine. And dopamine is linked with pleasurable sensations. And the brain tends to respond quite well to little dopamine secretions. And we get that from a number of things that we would find pleasurable. If you're an old Seinfeld fan and you're watching the program, you might see that the dopamine level in your system increases as you're laughing and enjoying the program. Well, the same thing happens when you mentioned cocaine, even a drug like that, which brings about pleasurable sensations and increases the dopamine levels in your system. Well, same thing happens with video games and with the phone. And we start to feel withdrawal when we're separated from whatever it is that spikes our dopamine levels. And your guest will talk, hopefully, much more scientifically than I have today with a lot more data. But just know that sometimes people really get chemically addicted to whatever it is that they're showing no real capacity to restrain themselves from doing. We know about addictions like cocaine, nicotine, ethanol, or alcohol. But there are other things we can become addicted to as well. And we find that with young people, video games and different electronic activity, and the use of the cell phone can be very, very much as addictive.
That's amazing. And, I'm from a different generation, a little bit older than today's teenagers. And quite honestly, after 2 or 3 text messages, I'm done. Either call me by phone or whatever, because I can't keep doing it. On the other hand, my kid, one of my kids, when you call, he says, you know what to do after the beep, but much better yet, send me a text. And I'm just the opposite. I'm like, don't send me a text. I want to talk to people. But that's just not the way people are wired these days, is it?
No, and it's a good thing that you want to talk to people, because you're on talk radio, and I don't think texting would work in this venue.
Yeah, we've tried it. That was our original plan, was we were just going to text everything to everybody. It didn't work out, and we thought, the problem is they can't hear us. So that's when we started up the radio station. And
if they're driving trucks, I don't want them to be texting you back and forth.
We found that our listeners driving the trucks and we're texting them and they're texting us back just didn't work as well.
Good point.
Yeah.
But that capacity to speak to people, we have noticed. I'm going to talk research whenever I can in this program. If I have a research study to share, I'm going to. And what we have learned is that there has been a decided decrease in social skills as people become more addicted, if you will, to their cell phones. There are people who don't want to talk on the phone at all. I'll joke with the teens and say, you can also use this thing to talk on. Watch this. And, imagine that, a phone, you can speak into it, but they haven't learned skills to talk to other people, because their communication goes on, electronically. And they can type really quickly, better than I ever could. And they can communicate in lots of ways, but verbal, face to face, it's a skill that we're not born with. We have to practice and learn, and we have to be with people in person, face to face, which is another reason the whole pandemic thing has been such a challenge for our country, because we can't isolate the children and expect them to learn the social skills that they need.
Exactly. And that's a whole barrel of questions right there too. It was funny, Dr. Chris, a couple of years ago, it was Christmas Day, and one of our traditions after we open all the presents, got all the kids and their kids over, and one of our traditions is to sit around and watch a movie, usually a Christmas movie. My favorite Christmas movie being Die Hard, but my wife doesn't let me put that on with the grandkids in the room. But, we're sitting around watching a movie, and I noticed that the kids, as they're watching the movie, and again, I call them kids, they're in their mid-30s. But, at this point, they were, say, 30 years old. And I noticed that, they're each, looking down at their phones every so often and typing something. And I come to realize they're texting each other in the room. Mm-hmm. They're laughing about the movie and other things and presents and all that kind of stuff, instead of just looking at each other and saying, hey, thank you very much for those, boots or whatever you got me. They're texting about it. And I'm thinking, wow, I am so old, because I'm just not wired that way. And I think a lot of people who are, say, over 40 years old are kind of the same way. They just look at that and go, I don't get it. I just don't get it.
Yeah, and it's hardest when the people over 40 are trying to connect with the younger people and saying, look, I want to have face-to-face conversations with you, or I want to at least talk on the phone. I don't want to just do text. But I have patients who tell me that their own children will text them anytime, but they won't talk on the phone. They don't feel comfortable talking to their own parents.
That's weird.
On the phone.
I say it's weird. That's the way it is today. I'm having trouble adjusting to that. Let's put it that way. Yeah. It's not the way I was raised, and I still talk to my mom once a week, and we talk at least an hour.
That's great.
And there's plenty of stuff to talk about. I don't know that my mom and I have, in our entire lifetimes, exchanged more than 10 or 15 text messages. And the text messages are usually, are you going to call me? It's after 4 o'clock on Sunday. Which is, the way my mom reminds me. Yeah. She always reminds me of at 4:10 if I haven't called yet, then she, drops me a text every so often. But, that's the way we're wired. I hate to draw this line of older generation, younger generation, and I know every generation, right, looks back and says, those kids today, I'm telling you, they won't stay off the lawn. Every generation's looked at the younger generation cross-eyed, but this is a bit different because it's an entire level of communication that is different.
Yeah, addressing a couple of things there. First of all, you talk about each generation talking about the teen years as being the death of mankind as we know it. I read this quote once that were talking about how teenagers were destroying the world and things would never be the same and so forth. I got to the bottom of it, and it was written by a guy named Aristotle. And I thought, wow, they had problems with teenagers back then. This is not a new thing. I think back, my dad would call my rock and roll music jungle music. And I thought it was great music, and I listened to my kids' rap music, and I go, oh, this is horrible. And then I think about how my father felt about my music, and I said, well, I guess that happens in every generation.
It must. And as far as I know, no music was written after about 1985 or so. Because after that's the only music I still listen to, and I was shocked the other day when my son referred to that as the oldie station.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I laughed at you saying that because I have been known to say this is the last good song that ever came out.
Exactly.
And it was like that Santana,
right.
Rob Thomas song, Smooth. Like, this is the last good song, but no, my kids disagree vehemently.
Vehemently, yeah. All right, hey, we're going to take our second break. It's the bottom of the hour. You're listening to Dr. Chris Cortman. I'm Tom Kelly, and we're talking about building strong minds here on TNCRadio.LIVE. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Dr. Christopher Cortman, and now for the Mental Health Minute. I had a patient who went into her primary care physician's office and started to cry when she talked about something. And before she could even finish the topic, he was writing a script for her for an antidepressant. She complained to me and said, "I'm not depressed. I was appropriately sad over something in my life, and I wish he had understood that." So, what's the difference between sadness and depression? First of all, to qualify for a clinical depression, you have to have a bunch of symptoms for a minimum of 2 full weeks. You can't have a bad day or a painful weekend and call it a clinical depression. What are those symptoms? Well, I want to tell you about 2 of the most important symptoms that will help you understand whether you have a depression or not. The first one is dysphoria. And that means down in the dumps, low mood, melancholia, just feeling depressed. Can't get out of bed. Don't feel good about anything. Hate how I'm feeling. Again, that's not just sad because you lost your dog or because your friend's moving away. That means I feel bad all over in my life. Kind of a global feeling of low and blue. But the second most important symptom is called anhedonia. What is that? That simply is the loss of pleasure in the usually rewarding activities. Anhedonia means not hedon. Hedonistic is eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. When you don't want to do the things that you normally would do, and someone says, "Come on, let's go golfing," or "There's a great movie," or "Guess who's coming to town? We got tickets." No, I don't want to do anything. That's anhedonia. I don't get joy or pleasure. If you have those 2 symptoms for at least 2 weeks, now we're talking about a clinical depression. And that's when you should get some professional help.
TNCRadio.LIVE, your commercial driver navigation station.
Are you snapping along?
Guilty.
Yeah, I like it. All right. You're listening to TNCRadio.LIVE. Irma Bombeck said, "Never lend your car to anyone whom you have given birth." That sounds like a good quote for teenagers. We're talking about all sorts of things. Getting to know Dr. Christopher. I'm going to get this right. I keep wanting to say Dr. Christopher. Dr. Christopher Cortman. This is our debut show on building strong minds. And, Dr. Cortman, you and I have talked a lot before tonight. And, I've got an undergraduate degree in psychology. It's kind of weird. I actually went to college to become a pastor. And before I went to college, I interviewed several pastors and said, if you had to do it all over again, well, I asked them, what did you study in college? And if you had to do all over again, what would you have studied in college? And most of them said, well, I studied philosophy, or I studied the Bible, or I studied history or something like that. But every single one of them said, I wish I knew more about psychology, because when they became pastors, people were sitting in their office pouring out their hearts, and they didn't always know what to say. So they all encouraged me, go study psychology. But I got into a program that really wasn't about clinical types of situations. It was much more experimental and those kinds of things. And I loved the numbers. And at one point, I needed to build out a 100 by 105 matrix on a reverse Polish notation calculator to try to build out correlations. And I said, I need something more powerful than this. So I started working on a computer, and before it's all over with, I ended up doing both and got into computers, of all things, instead of psychology. So
wow,
that's kind of a weird way to trip into the world of computers. And actually, the college I went to, they had just opened the psychology or the computer science program, and the guy who was leading the psychology program took over the computer science program, said, you ought to do computer science instead, and I ended up just doing both. So that's how I tripped into the psychology stuff. At what point in your life did you say, I think I want to study the psychology stuff a little bit more?
Well, once again, I'm going to blame the Yankees for not drafting me my senior year of high school. And I had to come up with a major at that point. The only thing I knew about psychology was watching the Bob Newhart show. He was Dr. Bob Hartley, and people came to him with their problems, and I think they didn't have anything like confidentiality at the time, because Bob would discuss all of his cases with the Jerry the dentist and his wife in bed, Suzanne Plachette. And so he's laying in bed talking about all his patients with his wife. And I thought, this doesn't sound like a bad career. The patients come in and they talk to him. And I thought, I'm pretty good at listening to people. I had no idea what I was getting into. And I just decided, let me try it. But you can't do this career, at least not licensed as a psychologist, until you get your doctorate. And by that time, it's kind of too late. You better like it, because you've just put all these years in. So I consider myself blessed to be in a career that I still, after all these years, really, really thoroughly enjoy, because there's a beautiful human connection with my patients. I mean, I don't know if this is a good word to use or not, but we learn to love each other, because we're in there talking about all kinds of things from their lives, and they trust me with sad things and painful things and traumatic things and funny things and happy things. And there's just a wonderful foundation of caring and trust and safety. And I never even think to call up Suzanne Plachette and tell her about these people's problems. But, the idea that people would talk to me about these things and trust me with these things, and then they improve by doing so, it's a real thrill. I mean, to enter into a stranger's life with the belief that if you trust me, I can help you feel better about yourself, your marriage, your parenthood, your self-esteem, whatever it is you're working on. So I still consider myself, Tom, after all these years, to be blessed to have a career like this.
Yeah, I imagine that it takes a while to build up that level of trust.
Well, I try to accomplish that in the very first session. My goal is to demonstrate to the person that I have heard you. That is, I want them to feel validated. So sometime before the first session is over, I might say to them, let me see if I get it, what you're telling me, and then I'll give them a couple of minutes of what I just heard. And what I often hear is, you just said that in a couple of minutes better than I did in the previous 50 minutes. And I have them at that point because they know I get it. I understand. And they know I'm not judging them. I'm just trying to make sense of what they're going through. And if I can get to that point, Tom, then they have allowed me access to actually help them. And how people heal is we're going to get into that hopefully in subsequent shows, but it's really exciting to share with them. If you trust me with this stuff, we're going to heal it. And that means if there's a gentleman who saw combat and he can't make peace with what happened, or something traumatic like a car accident, or a woman's still stuck on how she was abandoned by her husband, or someone that was molested as a child, or whatever it was, we can heal those things if people are brave enough to bring them and share them. And that's what keeps me going in this field. It's the belief that every day I have a chance to help somebody feel better, to someone to heal, someone to put something away that has been tormenting them for years and years, and we could put it away very quickly so that it stops interfering in their lives.
That's not easy work, is it? I mean, for them or for you.
No, it's not easy, and I would argue that it's a lot harder for them because they're taking me to these places where there's a sign on the door that says "Keep out," and it's got a picture of a skull and crossbones. This is a part of my life that I don't talk to, to anyone. I've met combat veterans, for instance, who said things like, well, I was in Vietnam and we don't talk about that. And that's one sentence. I was in Vietnam and we don't talk about that, meaning I'm not ever going to let anyone in that area of my life. But in order to heal, ironically, I need access. I need access to the worst things that have ever happened to people. I need to know where. Well, I'll share with you what I say to them. Take me to the pain. And the pain could be something that happened at age 6 or a week ago Tuesday or anything in between. But whatever they're not at peace with, whatever has not been digested, we have to go there. And it's my job, when they trust me with that, it's my job to help them finally champion whatever it is that still hurts, whatever is still painful, whatever is still traumatic, whatever hasn't been resolved.
So, Dr. Chris, I guess the question that comes to my mind, and probably most people who are listening then, is how do you build the wall to not get sucked into their pain? Because obviously you want to be empathetic and sympathetic and hear them and stuff like that, but I mean, isn't that a burden sometimes to carry that home? And you've heard the worst stories of some of the horrible things that people do to people and all those kinds of things. Doesn't that get heavy for you?
Tom, that's a really excellent question. I'm glad you brought it up because I often don't mention that without prompting. And this field is not for everybody because there are people I know that the first time they hear a story that's sad or traumatic, they start crying along, and they're blubbering worse than the patient is.
I think I would.
Or they'll come home at the end of a day and say, I can't do that. How do you do that? Well, for me, I have the ability to separate myself so that I'm not traumatized with the patient, thank God, because I would never have lasted a week. I do a lot more than this than most people do. I'll do 45 of these patients in a week. And over all these years, I've amassed over 75,000 hours of this, which is a ridiculous number. And what I'm able to do, gratefully, I think this is just a natural skill, is that I can separate myself from whatever it is they're sharing. It doesn't mean that I don't care. It doesn't mean that I can't feel human emotion. I'm giving myself completely to the person during the session that they're with me. And when they leave, and they do at the end of 50, 60 minutes, I have to let them go with their stuff and then dive into the next person. And I do that 9 hours a day. I'm with one person at a time, or unless they're a couple or a family, of course. But you have me during that time. And we're laughing together, and we're going through the pain together. But then I have to let you go at the end of the hour until next time. And because I can do that, at least up to this point in my career, it doesn't cause me to stay up all night with insomnia. I'm not seeing traumatic images of my patients' stories in my sleep. I'm not saying one more week of this and I'm going to jump off the nearest bridge. Mm-hmm. I would say cliff, but we don't have cliffs in Florida. Gotcha. We don't have mountains. We just have bridges. That's it.
Absolutely. Hey,
go ahead.
We're going to step out, take a break. We're going to come back in just a minute and wrap up this hour. It's been great getting to know you so far. You're listening to TNCRadio.LIVE. This is Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. Stay tuned.
This blog on TNCRadio.LIVE is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. 4 things to consider before becoming a hazmat tanker driver. The demand for truck drivers is higher than ever. There are many different types of truck driving jobs. Whether you're a new driver or if you already have a couple of years' experience, it's never a bad idea to get new skills and endorsements. Hazmat tanker jobs are one of the many truck driving jobs. If you're considering becoming a hazmat tanker truck driver, here's some things you should know. What is a hazmat tanker? Hazmat truck drivers haul, deliver, and dispose of hazardous materials. Hazardous material can include things like gases, explosives, corrosive chemicals, poisons, and radioactive materials. Hazmat tanker drivers are not limited to hauling only hazardous material. They can also drive a non-hazardous tanker. Have the right requirements. Becoming a certified hazmat tanker driver will require you to add specific endorsements to your already existing CDL. You'll have to undergo training that is specifically designed for transporting and handling hazardous materials. After obtaining your CDL, you'll have to go through a background check and complete the application requirements. The application requires ID proof of being at least 21 years old, proof of citizenship or legal residence, a medical exam and eye exam. You must pass the hazmat knowledge test too. It's more stressful. Regardless of what you're hauling, being a truck driver is a stressful job. Safety is a top priority for truck drivers, especially for hazmat tanker drivers. Hauling hazardous material means that accidents or spills are much more severe. Hazmat tanker drivers are under much more stress and caution than drivers that haul non-hazardous material. Drivers need to be extra careful and need to plan their routes before driving. It requires a lot of skill. Truck driving is a difficult career and it's not for everyone. Being a truck driver already requires a lot of skill. For hazmat tanker drivers, there are specific skills that you'll need in order to be successful. Aside from the technical skills, hazmat tankers should also have personal skills. Some personal skills include being punctual, detail-oriented, and patient. These skills will make you a better driver in the long run. You make more money. Hazmat tanker drivers make more money on average. This is because more experience and skills required to haul hazardous loads. According to Salary.com, the average salary for a hazmat tanker driver in the United States is just over $63,000 a year, but the average salary range falls between $55,000 and $72,000 a year. Salary varies from education, certification, experiences, and additional skills. This info blog was brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. TNCRadio.LIVE with your shot at $1,000 cash. Listen for a new $1,000 keyword at 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Central Time each workday. Then enter it at www.tncradio.live for your chance at $1,000 and pay off your Christmas bills in this nationwide contest.
Welcome back, TNCRadio.LIVE. This is Building Strong Minds with Dr. Christopher Cortman. I'm Tom Kelly, And we were talking about a lot of different things in the last hour. I have to confess, I guess maybe I am getting a little bit younger because last week I joined TikTok. First time ever. But I know that you have a presence on TikTok, and I went out to TikTok and put in TNCRadio.LIVE and was able to find you. Tell us what you're doing on TikTok.
Really just annoying teenage girls, I think. Well, I was told I've been doing these mental health minutes, and that's a minute or two of material because that's really all I know about anything. And then I run out. But I'll throw these out in a number of social media outlets, and the place where most people are inclined to watch is TikTok. And I thought, from my daughter, that was just a place where girls would dance.
Right.
And, I tried dancing with her on one of those videos, and let's just say it didn't work out that well. But the videos are gaining a lot of traction. I don't know who's watching them, but people are watching them more on TikTok than anywhere else. So my website is SRQShrink.com, which is linked to all of social media. And if anyone just plugged in my name, Dr. Christopher Cortman, they can find me. And, always happy to respond to people when they ask questions or write some kind of comment. Happy to talk to people from anywhere. So that certainly includes your audience.
Now, what does SRQShrink stand for?
SRQ... kind of like LAX is Los Angeles, SRQ is Sarasota.
Oh, okay.
So it's Sarasota Shrink.
Got it.
And psychologists and psychiatrists have been called head shrinkers for many years. And so rather than dispute that, I just built it, I incorporated it right into my name.
That'll work, absolutely. So SRQ Shrink, or we just type in your name, Dr. Christopher Cortman. Now, Dr. Chris, one of the things that we've started doing is we've grabbed a few of those really excellent, I love those mental health moments, and have played one tonight. We probably won't have time to play that. We might get another one in this evening, but I think they're fantastic. And, to encapsulate some of the things that you do into a moment or two. And just, I realize you're not trying to cure anybody with that. Nobody gets cured of a problem. But you're helping adjust the thinking just a little bit. Yet one of them that I was listening to, you were talking about how the mind and the stomach are somewhat alike in the way they process things, somewhat different, but somewhat alike. I found that one fascinating.
Well, now that you brought that up, my analogy there is that the mind is kind of like the stomach in the sense that whatever has not been digested may repeat on you. And for the stomach, that's only about 8 or 10 hours. You will never burp up something you ate in 3rd grade because that has long since been digested.
Right.
But with the mind, you can find things repeating on you that have never been digested from 2nd grade, from when you were a little boy or a girl, or even 20 years ago, or when you were in college, or struggling in high school, or whatever else you were going through in life, from your first car accident to a divorce or whatever. The mind will repeat these things if they haven't been digested. And what I mean by that is they haven't been laid to rest or championed in some way. What I look for when I work with people is to have something where it no longer hurts to talk about it. It's okay now. A lot of people I work with have lost a child to death, and that's what brings them into therapy. And my job is to help them, again, to digest that or make peace with that. Not that it's a a great thing that they lost their child, but rather they have a sense of peace and a sense of acceptance, and hopefully a perspective that allows them to go on with their lives in a positive way, and hang on to their faith and their spirituality and their hope, as opposed to that was the moment when I lost all my hope in life and I haven't had a happy day, since so-and-so died. And, I hear so many of those stories, and that's when it's my job to try to help somebody put that in a better place, have them make peace with the worst thing that's ever happened to them. That was the purpose of the last book that I wrote, called Keep Your Pain in the Past. It's about getting over the worst thing that ever happened to you, since so many people come in to treatment because of something that they haven't been able to make peace with. And sometimes we're going back. I just had a young man. I love working with this guy. I've only had a few sessions, but his thing was when his mother died. She suicided about 3-4 years ago, and I was able to help him put that in a better place in the second session, so that that feels better to him than at any time since it's happened. He has his mother in a positive place in his mind, and it no longer is contributing to a depression or an anxiety. It's like he finally has some peace about that. And that's my job. My job is to help people take the things that life doles out to us, the losses, the challenges, the traumas, the painful things that we experience, especially if we hang out on planet Earth for 80 years or so. We're going to have so many painful things, Tom,
Sure.
that we have to contend with. We lose thousands of things and people along the way, and that's in a successful life.
Right.
If you succeed by living to 85 or 90, you have lost so many people. You've lost so many things that mattered to you. I mean, you can't even go back to your old neighborhood because you don't recognize anything. The people have changed. The restaurants have changed. The schools have been knocked down. Everything's rebuilt. I mean, life is in this constant state of flux. We lose, and we have to keep on learning how to say goodbye to things and to keep going and to keep loving and to keep trying and keep connecting, because life is a series of changes, a series of losses that we have to learn how to champion. And nobody teaches us these things.
No.
We're taught myths like time heals all wounds. Well, thanks a lot. That's my best coping tool, is just to sit there and watch the clock tick. That's not very helpful, and it's not even true.
It's not even true.
These Vietnam veterans, they've been watching the clock for 40, 50 years, and if they're not any better, what do I tell them? Don't worry, time will heal this. No, it won't. No. Time just passes. Yeah. Healing is active. So my job is to help them get into the teeth of what's unfinished and to work through that. And, we'll talk about how to do that, hopefully in subsequent episodes.
Oh, absolutely we will. So, I'm really excited about the program. I think this is going to be fantastic. Absolutely. We'd love to hear from you all. You can send us an anonymous message at Dr. Chris at TNCRadio.LIVE. Nobody else will see it, and we don't track you down. We would never use your name or likeness or anything else like that. So if you wanted to ask a question, feel free to do that. For now, though, we're going to sign off, and we will 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 sign